Thank you, Daisy. This is our April member meeting, and we're super excited to have all of you with us tonight. We are making our way through 2022, and I hope everyone is having a wonderful spring season and enjoying the heat that some of us might be getting hit with right now. So for our agenda tonight, we will start as usual with a grounding facilitated by our healing team, and then some member recognition, some recognizing some of our new members. Then we'll give you some updates, what's happening at Initiate Justice organizationally and like org-wide. And then we will allow each of our committee leads to provide you all with some updates. What are our 5 committees working on, and how can you plug in case you might have missed their monthly meeting for the past month? And then what is their upcoming meetings for April? And then our special event tonight is going to be a discussion of the state budget process with Assemblymember Mark Stone and facilitated by our Executive Director, Taina. So that's going to start around 7:15. Once that wraps up, we will have our policy team join us to talk about the YPED regulations that CDCR released. So those will be discussed at about 8 o'clock and how you can submit public comment around those regulations. So super excited. We'll close with our member of the month and some announcements for upcoming meetings. But thank you everyone for joining us. You can turn on closed captioning. The call is being recorded. My name is Antoinette Ratcliffe, and I am hosting alongside Daisy. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody, and welcome to our newcomers. I think I saw a couple in the chat. Let us know how you heard about us. We'd love to know what brought you to our meeting tonight. And we hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Also, just wanted to welcome home Reina, who dropped in the chat that they were released last in late February. So congratulations and welcome home, Reina. My name is Daisy. I serve as Initiate Justice's statewide advocacy manager, and excited to present tonight's program alongside with Antoinette. But please, as Antoinette said, feel free to utilize the chat. We do our best to respond to comments in the chat, but if for whatever reason there's a question throughout tonight's presentation that remains unanswered, we do review the chat after the meeting, and we'll be able to respond to you in an email after tonight's meeting. So welcome everybody, stay cool, bring your dinner if you're eating your dinner right now, enjoy your water, whatever you're sipping on tonight, and excited to move us into tonight's presentation. To kick us off, I'm actually going to pass this over to Oka, who's going to lead us into a grounding exercise for the evening.
Thank you, Daisy. Hi, everyone. I'm grateful to be here in this space with you all. Today, I'm going to share something that I really like to do. It helps me ground back to the earth, because sometimes I feel like away, disconnected, get busy. So I really hope that this resonates. So to start, feel free to turn off your camera, or you can keep it on, whatever feels calling to you. You can sit all the way up if you'd like, or you can lay all the way down. This is your practice. I am just here as a guide. So if it feels good, close your eyes or gaze down towards your nose. Relax your shoulders. Relax your jaw, your hips. And begin to notice your breath. Coming to this moment of stillness. Notice if you're breathing into your chest or into your belly. perhaps they feel heavy. Let your shoulders feel heavy and down. Begin to bring your awareness to your heart space and begin to soften your heart. Maybe place your left hand over your heart or your right and feel your heart beating. Send gratitude to your heart for beating. Send gratitude to yourself for showing up, for being you. And gratitude to everyone else around you. Feel free to keep your hands here if it feels good, or place them down in your lap. And now bring your awareness to your tailbone. Good. Allow your tailbone to soften. And now imagine roots growing out from your tailbone. And the roots are going down into the surface below you. Imagine these roots going down into the earth, maybe passing any ancient rock or water. Imagine these roots going all the way down to the core of the earth. And then breathe in all of that energy, that grounding, nourishing, compassionate energy into the roots, into your tailbone, and let this energy just heal every single cell in your body, and exhale from the crown of your head if that feels good. Good. Continue to inhale in this grounding, supporting, loving, compassionate energy from the earth down into your tailbone, into your body, and out of the crown of your head. Good. Inhaling in that grounding, supportive energy back all the way up into the root, into your tailbone, into your body, and exhaling from the crown of your head. Beautiful. Now slowly bring those roots back up from the core of the earth, and bring those roots all the way up, passing ancient rock, passing water. And just envision those roots going back up into your tailbone, feeling yourself, feeling the sensation of your breath. Begin to feel this sense of love and compassion, groundedness in your body. Notice your breath. And then slowly wiggle your fingers, your toes, maybe your shoulders come up to your ears. Make circles if that feels good. And then stretch your hands out, kind of like you're just waking up. And as you slowly open your eyes, begin to notice all of the shapes and colors around you. Begin to notice the sounds around you. And begin to feel anything touching you, your clothes, the surface below you, maybe any taste in your mouth, coming to your 5 senses. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Oka, for that exercise. As you said, taste, I was tasting the chili in my mouth from the rice that I had mixed it with. So I'm very present right now, connected with my taste buds. um, for folks who want to share what that was like for you, please drop in the chat what that experience was like. I'll share with Oka that that exercise was actually very helpful for me. I've done that before in my personal healing sessions, and just the imagery of thinking what that looks like, and really connecting with our body and with Earth is a powerful experience. So thank you for that. And folks, even are sharing their appreciation in the chat and the energy that felt through that. But also, I'm uplifting a comment, particularly envisioning the beach and rock that was mentioned in that exercise. So thank you so much, Oka. We'll be hearing more from Oka in a little bit once we go over committees and how you can participate in some events that are hosted through the Healing Committee. But just wanted to kick us off by welcoming folks who may have trickled in between when we started the meeting and now. My name is Daisy. I serve as Initiate Justice's Statewide Advocacy Manager. We have folks that are here for the first time, so let us know if it's your first time attending a member meeting, how you heard about us. That helps us kind of figure out where folks are coming in from, where they're hearing about us. And we are really excited about tonight's program. To start off the meeting, I wanted to just go over our membership structure for folks, especially for folks who are brand new. So here at Initiate Justice, we have an outside membership structure that allows anybody in the community to be part of this membership. And so in order to be considered a member, an outside member of Initiate Justice, you have to attend at least 3 monthly meetings, which is where we're at tonight. We host these every first Wednesday of the month from 6:30 to 8:30. So if you attend 3 meetings within a 4-month period, as well as attend a short orientation that we do at the end of this meeting. So if you're here for the first time, stay after the meeting ends. We'll do a very brief orientation, and that already qualifies you with the exception of attending the committee meetings. So come to 3 out of 4 member meetings, attend the orientation that we'll do at the end of this meeting. And in addition to that, the only requirement is that you sign up to support at least one of our committees. And we'll be going over what those committees are, what they do, who leads those committees in a bit. But we have 5 different committees that you can get involved with. And so we just ask that you sign up to support at least one of those committees. And they meet at different times in the month, at least once a month. So there's definitely plenty to choose from. We'll be hearing more about when their upcoming events are and how you can plug in to attend those meetings. But once you satisfy those requirements, then you are eligible to become an outside member. So for the month of April, we have a new member. It's actually Dorothy, who I don't see here in the room tonight, but Dorothy, when you watch this recording, we'll make sure that you receive your roses. Congratulations on becoming an outside member with Initiate Justice. And we'll be in touch with you to make sure that you get your welcome package. That includes a t-shirt and a couple of goodies to welcome you into our community as an official outside member. So please join me in welcoming Dorothy, and share your comments in the chat as far as like if you have any questions on our membership structure. In addition, we also just have a couple of organizational updates, again, for folks who want folks to be recording. So a couple of organizational updates that we do to keep folks in the loop as far as what's going on at Initiate Justice. we have a podcast. So if you're brand new to IJ and you're learning everything about what we do here tonight, we do have a podcast that is available on our website as well as anywhere that podcasts are available. And so we just released season 2 last month. We actually released the 3rd episode that's out now a couple of days ago. So episode 3 of season 2 is entitled Abolition Serves Survivors. And so in this episode, we actually feature one of our outside organizers, Adriana, who addresses survivors and how abolition centers survivors and what it looks like where she is currently employed. So that is available on our website. And again, wherever podcasts are sold. So I'm sorry, not sold, where you can listen to them. So check out Abolition is for Everybody and give us a review. Let us know your thoughts. On our site, we also have transcripts available. So if you want to read that content, that definitely is available for you on our website. But please let us know your thoughts as far as what you've been hearing to up until now on the podcast season 2. We also will be releasing a new episode next Tuesday, episode 4, which abolition addresses robbery. And so in that episode, we'll actually be featuring our outside organizer, Graham, who some of you may be familiar with in our healing circle spaces. So Graham will be serving as the special guest in that episode. And if there's any questions about the podcast, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We have folks here who are more than happy to answer those questions that you may have, but please give it a listen and let us know what your thoughts are. In addition, we have a panel event that's happening next Friday, April 15th, Tax Day, from 12 to 1:30 p.m. We're actually going to be featuring 2 of our staff members as panelists at this event that's being hosted by UC Irvine. The panel event is titled Abolition Now, Bridging Scholar Practitioner Divides. And so Lee, who's our inside organizing manager, and Sarah, who's our policy analyst, will be part of a conversation to discuss what abolition is, how it can be achieved, and how those interested can be involved. So definitely register online for the virtual event via Zoom. One of my colleagues is going to be dropping the link in the chat. But if you are able to attend and want to support and hear what folks have to say, that will be taking place next Friday, April 15th from 12 to 1:30. In addition, we have a couple of exciting staff promotions we wanted to share with you all. So several of our team members are having a change in their title as a result of the amazing work that they are doing. So please join me in congratulating our team for their promotion. So first, we have Greg, who's now our policy director. Ra, who is our communications director, and my colleague Antoinette, who's our outside organizing director. So these folks, if you've been involved with our organization in whatever capacity, you may be familiar with them and the work that they do. And so we congratulate the 3 of you for this accomplishment and for helping us lead the work that we need to do to help end incarceration and bring our loved ones home. So yes, I see the love in the chat. Thank y'all for dropping in that love. Our staff and team members are here. So we want to make sure we give them their roses and let them know how much we appreciate them for the work that they are doing. The last thing I have before I pass it off to Antoinette is we are closed on Friday, April 29th. Initiate Justice actually takes the last Friday of the month usually off for mental health care for our staff. So just wanting to make sure folks are aware that we'll be circling back to any pending messages when we return in May. And so with that being said, I'm actually going to pass it over to Antoinette, who is going to go over the committees and we'll be hearing from our committee leads as far as what they are doing with the committees that they co-lead or lead.
Thank you, Daisy, and thank you, everyone. I do see a couple of people have just joined us within the past few minutes. So in case you need closed captioning or transcription, that is available. And also, if you're joining us for the first time, please let us know in the chat so that we can properly welcome you to our community here at Initiate Justice. So like Daisy said, we have 5 active committees that really lead, but also support our work to change policy and in incarceration here in California. And so those committees are supported not only by our outside organizers, but also by all of you, our outside members, some who are official outside members, and then also some members who support our work when they do have the time, but maybe aren't able to become official members. So these committees are open to all of you that are here today, regardless of whether you are consistently showing up to this meeting or whether you just want to stay engaged with one or a couple of these particular committees. And so starting us off is going to be our advocacy committee. So our advocacy committee, led by our policy team, really does the groundwork to advance our policy campaigns and also to educate both all of our members and organizers on how to be effective advocates, but also as much education just to our community who are directly impacted in general on how to be effective advocates. And so I'm going to pass it on to our policy team with our advocacy committee updates.
Thanks so much, Antoinette. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sarah. I'm the policy analyst here at Initiate Justice, and I co-lead the advocacy committee with our policy director, Greg. So as Antoinette said, our policy committee is open to everybody. It's welcome to all, and you can come if it sounds interesting, just pop in, or you can come to learn, as Antoinette said, all of our updates for our co-sponsored bills, and then also tools for how to be an effective advocate. So it's, again, just really want to emphasize that no experience necessary, feel welcome to come. And yeah, it's always a really fun time, so I encourage everyone to join. I also wanted anybody who has previously been coming to policy office hours to know that we decided to fold policy office hours into our main advocacy committee and into Instagram Lives. So usually we have 3 different events each month, plus our Instagram Lives. Now we're going to have 2 events in our Instagram Live. We'll always have our main advocacy committee always on the 3rd Tuesday of every month from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. And again, we'll always give you all the updates on the bills and then also narrow in on specific tools for advocacy depending on that session. And then we also have the 4th Tuesday of every month, our Abolition Corner. So hand in hand with policy change goes culture change. So again, welcome to all. Join Abolition Corner to learn about how you can contribute, not just as a policy person, as an advocate, but also through how you interact with the people in your everyday life. And this month we're focusing on justice possibilities outside of incarceration. So as abolitionists, folks often ask us, if we don't have incarceration, what do we do? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about this coming month. And we'll have a short presentation in the beginning going over that subject, and then an open, friendly conversation. You can access, as Daisy just put in the chat, all of our events at our policy calendar on our website. And then also in our follow-up email, you'll get links to all of our committee events, every department's committee events, and a calendar and everything. So hopefully we'll see you all there. And yeah, that's the advocacy committee. Hope to see you there.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Definitely encourage everyone to plug in with the advocacy committee when you do have the time to do so. Next is our inside membership committee. So our inside membership committee is responsible for engaging with our inside members who are incarcerated throughout the state of California, but also responsible for recruiting new members, responding to mail, and finding other ways to build the power of our inside members. And so I'm going to pass it to Crystal and Efrain.
Thank you, Antoinette. Good evening, everyone. My name is Crystal, pronouns she, her, and I'm the Inside Membership Manager with Initiate Justice. Our committee will actually not be meeting in April. We have a lot of exciting projects, one big project in progress, and we're still tying up some loose ends, but we'll definitely need your help. We will have a lot of calls to action in May, and we'll definitely need your help with this project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop a link in the chat that tells you more about what the Inside Membership Committee does. And I'm going to drop the RSVP link so that you all can attend in May. And as Antoinette mentioned, we are the lead in all of incarcerated members throughout the state of California, and the policy journal that is sent to everyone with a lot of our updates on what we are all doing out here. So I dropped that link in the chat so that y'all can take a look. Everybody on the inside should have received or is about to receive the journal. So please check it out in the link that I've dropped in the chat. And if y'all have any questions, please make sure to email myself or Efrain. I will also drop the emails in the chat. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to you, Antoinette.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Thank you, Crystal and Efrain and our entire Inside Membership Committee. And I think that it's a pretty well-deserved, month off for our Inside Membership Committee, who engages and connects with our over 45,000 inside members and responds to mail consistently. So thank you so much to our Inside Membership Committee, and definitely encouraging all of our volunteers and members who support that committee to take that time off and enjoy that break. And so next is our Inside Organizing Committee. So I don't think our Inside Organizing Committee needs an introduction, but our Inside Organizing Committee works to develop the leadership of some of those inside members that continue to mobilize their other peers around them and incarcerated with them. And so I'm going to pass it to Lee to go ahead and give us our updates.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. And good evening, my future social justice budget badasses. Tonight's meeting is all about budgets and regulations. We're so excited tonight to geek out about budgets with Assemblymember Mark Stone and learn more about the YPED regulations with IJ staff. My name is Lee Gibson, he, him, his. I'm the Inside Organizing Manager here at Initiate Justice. My Inside Organizing collaborator is catching a plane from Alabama right now, so he won't be able to join us right now. So hopefully he has a safe flight. Wheels up, wheels down, my friend. Currently, IJ has 264 inside organizers, 39 senior inside organizers, and 10 mentors. What the IO team does, we train, we educate incarcerated folks about the legislative process, intersectionality, and person-centered language. We do this through a 62-page curriculum and workbook where graduates receive certificates and support letters for their efforts. Then, when they are released, they join our communities and continue the defense of human rights, like Ramon Cross. I see Jay here, Efrain, I know that you were in there advocating. Then what do? They level up inside. They become senior inside organizers. They're standout advocates at their facilities. They collect support letters, conduct surveys, and carry out social justice action items behind those walls. So we need to support them. And what we need to do to continue to support them here at the IO committee, we need phone trainers. We're tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, when we actually have our meeting at 5:30, we're going to go through a whole training process to support our IOs and their organizing efforts and uniting their peers and loved ones behind those prison walls. You can hit me up, Lee at initiatejustice.org or Adam at initiatejustice.org. You can RSVP for our committee. I'm sure they just dropped the links and things. And so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. We have a jam-packed night, and I look forward to learning so much from our guests and from you all. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Antoinette. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee. And I have to follow that amazing and very contagious energy. So let's hope some of it rubbed off on me as I provide some outside membership committee updates. So Daisy and myself lead our outside membership committee, which works to engage our existing membership base, works to build the skills of our existing membership base, and also works to recruit and do outreach to new members in the community or potential members in the community. And so with that, some things that we've been working on recently are skill building webinars and workshops to really build up and improve or enhance some of those fundamental skills that we need not only to be effective advocates, but just to be effective community members, right? And so one thing that we particularly want to share is that we have been in contact with the East Bay Community Law Center, and they are conducting a survey from our members and our organizers around what types of information related to financial literacy you all would need or would be interested in learning more about, and are willing to host a workshop for our Initiate Justice community to build some of those basic financial literacy skills, things around credit, things around why a credit card and what is a credit card useful for, things around just planning, financial planning and things of that nature to maintain your autonomy, right? Because we know that we have to have our finances in order to actually even be able to live comfortably and do this work. And so this is a very essential skill that we're excited to bring to you all. So if you're interested in any type of workshop around financial literacy, quickly fill out the survey that Daisy just dropped into the chat. And we're excited to be bringing you that workshop soon. Our outside membership committee also works on developing these types of ideas and what types of support is needed and can we provide. And this is one of those things that came from the brainstorming sessions at our committee meeting. So our next committee meeting is going to be on Wednesday, April 27th, and that's going to be at 5:30 p.m. You can register on the link that Daisy just dropped into the chat. Thank you so much. And if there are any questions regarding our outside membership committee, you can reach out to myself, Antoinette at initiatejustice.org, or Daisy at initiatejustice.org for any questions or concerns. Thank you. And I'm going to move us along so that we can get to our main event soon. But I'm going to move us along to updates from our healing committee, unless Daisy, there's anything that I missed regarding the outside membership committee. I see her shaking her head no, so I'm going to pass it along to Oka with some updates around what our healing committee is working on. And just a brief introduction, we're super grateful. Our healing committee was actually established by some of our outside organizers who graduated from previous Institute of Impacted Leaders cohorts. So super grateful to Rashida, who I think I've seen here in the room, as well as Indigo, who built out our outside membership committee, and grateful for Oka, who's continuing to maintain the success of that program. So thank you, Oka.
Thank you. Hi, beautiful people. So as far as healing within IJ, there are Mindful Monday, and this Monday, there's not any Mindful Mondays on the first Monday, but the second, third, and fourth, there are 3 circles. There is a circle, a men's circle, and then there is a circle for people who have experienced incarceration, and a circle for people with a loved one inside. These circles are extremely powerful, led by powerful people. I highly, if you have the time, come. Yeah, it's powerful stuff. And then the other thing, we have also launched a healing committee where volunteers can support, and the intention of this is to spread healing within IJ and other departments as well. So if this feels calling to you, then fill out the survey right here. There are 4 different little groups within the committees if you feel called to volunteer under the healing umbrella. Mindful Mondays and healing committee volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oka. And if you have any questions regarding healing, or if you want to get involved, you can also contact Oka and our healing team at joinhealing@initiatejustice.org. Highly recommend. Our healing committee is working on resource lists and different tools to help you all navigate your own healing process as well. So thank you, Oka. Thank you to our healing committee. And just want to share and remind folks that our entire calendar of events is available on our website, and you can register for these meetings there. So if you go to our website at initiatejustice.org/calendar, that's where you can view all of these events, read a little bit about them, and also register for all of these various events and meetings that we have throughout the month. But Daisy, if there's not anything else, I'm going to pass it over to you. Thank you so much to all of our healing committee, all of our committee leads in general, healing too, but all of our committee leads, but also to each of you that support our committees, because we cannot do this work without your consistent effort, commitment, and dedication to our committees and to the work that we do. So thank you.
Thanks, Antoinette. And again, that was a lot of information that we went over, a lot of dates, a lot of links. And we understand that can be a lot of information if you're here for the first time. So have no fear. We definitely go over this at the end in the orientation, but we also send a follow-up email with important links. But two things I want to uplift, especially if you're new or interested in signing up for a new committee that you're not part of. We have a form where you can fill out to express interest in a committee from what you heard tonight, and we'll add you to the email list for that particular committee. Each committee sends out their reminders for any committees events that they have. So if there was one tonight that you really want to join right now, we'll drop the link in the chat, but we definitely also share that out for folks who are new at the end of tonight's meeting during our orientation and in a separate email. And in addition, for all of the events that are happening over the month of April, we actually have a calendar of events that you can access on our website that has all of the events that we just announced, all of the registration links that you can access. So somebody is dropping the link in the chat now, but you just have to go to our website, and you can also just click on events, and that is another sure way to access that calendar. And so you'll be able to select which events you're interested in attending and register on the spot by following the link for each event. But aside from that, just to uplift again, if there's any questions, please drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to you on those questions. But I actually want to turn it over to our next segment, and starting off with the introduction before I pass it off to our facilitator for this segment. So tonight we're actually being joined by Assemblymember Mark Stone, who's going to be going over the state budget process with us, as well as how to be effective advocates. Now, if you're new and you're not familiar with Assemblymember Mark Stone, I will tell you who he is right now. Assemblymember Stone represents the people of California's 29th Assembly District, which includes portions of Santa Cruz, Santa Clara, and Monterey counties. He's actually in his 5th term as a state legislator, and he has earned his reputation as a leader helping California's most vulnerable residents, and currently serves as the chair of the Assembly Judiciary Committee and also sits on various other committees. But important to note that he actually does sit on the Assembly Budget Subcommittee number 5, which focuses on public safety, which a lot of us are very interested in learning more about. Assemblymember Stone has written numerous laws that have helped people be released from prison to reintegrate into society as part of his commitment to criminal justice reform. He also has worked to help juveniles in the justice system get the mental health services that they need, and also to ensure that they can succeed in their communities when they are released. Before he entered public service, Assemblymember Stone worked as an attorney in the tech industry and also as a professor at the Naval Postgraduate School. He currently lives in Scotts Valley with his wife, Kathy, and they have 2 adult children. Assemblymember Stone, I hope I did you justice. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm actually going to pass it over to Taina, our executive director, who's going to facilitate this segment for us.
Thank you so much, Daisy, and welcome everybody. And hello, Assemblymember Stone. So good to see you. I think a lot of folks know, but for everybody who does not know, Assemblymember Stone is my old boss. And I can speak from personal experience to say that he is one of the most awesome people I have ever met. I try to be as good of a boss as you are, or as you were to me, Assemblymember Stone. We're so sad to see you go this year. I know that you had two more years before you officially termed out. So we just want to say thank you so much for making the time to be with us this evening, for your courage and integrity that you have always carried yourself with in doing this work, and for your support of Initiate Justice always. Before I pass it over to you, I'll also just uplift that Assemblymember Stone has authored more Initiate Justice bills than any other legislator. He's authored our bills AB 45, AB 965, AB 292, which passed last year, and was a co-author of ACA 6, which became Prop 17 and restored voting rights to folks on parole. So he is a wonderful ally and a connoisseur of bow ties. So I will pass it over to you, Assemblymember Stone.
Thank you, Taina. And the story that I tell about Taina and bringing her into my office was I had to, because she was such a pain in the ass. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I can say that here. As an activist and holding policymakers accountable, that it was just easier to bring her on board than it was to have to deal with her all the time. But I say that with a great deal of respect and admiration for Taina and what she's capable of. You know her, and she is a powerhouse. We could only keep her in the office for a little while because she's destined for greater things, but she was an incredible part of Team Stone and really taught me a lot just in the time that I had her there. And actually just even the time she was advocating and the relationship that we continue. And that's the important thing really about politics, is understanding who's who, building relationships, knowing whom you can trust and whom to be a little wary of, and as we go through this process. So I was asked to talk about the budget, and that has a real opportunity to be a bit of a yawner, and I apologize about that. So I'm going to try and touch on the highlights as it's relevant, and kind of the way that the legislature is made up, because underlying all of this is really giving you tools to be better advocates. And the more you understand our processes and how things work and where the touch points are and what we can and cannot do, then that allows you to be better advocates. Although I will always tell you that as an advocate, your job is not to allow us to limit the conversation by explaining what we can or can't do, but pushing us to better heights and being creative and pushing our own system to be better. It's too easy of a dodge for a legislator to say, oh, that just can't be done, or that's kind of difficult. And you get to ask us why, and make sure that you're making us do what we say we're going to do. And that, I will tell you, in Sacramento is a real problem. So the budget process, there are two main functions of the legislature. There are a number of functions, including oversight of the other two branches of government. And you should be familiar, I hope, with the branches of government: the judicial system, the executive branch, and the legislature. And each, under our Constitution and the federal Constitution, have very specific roles. And we do policy, we do, and also oversight, and we do budget. And the budget is really a legislative document. The governor submits a budget, a planned budget, in January, and then we start our budget work. And our budget work is having subcommittees, and it was mentioned, I sit on subcommittee 5, which oversees public safety. So we have the jurisdiction to look at the budget components for things like CDCR, the courts, the Office of Emergency Services, anything having to do with public safety. That's in our purview. A number of years ago, I suggested to the speaker, and the speaker is someone we elect to run the assembly. And once we elect the speaker to run the assembly, he tells us which committees we sit on, whether or not we're chairs, where our office is, where our desk is, kind of mom. And the poor guy, Anthony Rendon, right now is a tremendous individual. And I can't imagine why he wants to do what he does, but that's fine. I suggested to him that because we're dealing with policy and my jurisdiction, my committee is judiciary, so I have jurisdiction over the entire civil legal system, which is essentially everything in the legal system except for public safety. The public safety chair, as you probably know, is Reggie Jones Sawyer. And I suggested to the speaker that on budget sub 5, he placed the 2 chairs who have jurisdiction over all of the policy areas that sub 5 covers. And so that would be public safety and judiciary. So both Reggie and I sit on sub 5, and we get to then cause a little bit of trouble because we see both policy and we see budget. And I do know, for those of you who have been communicating with us and talking about budget, I know your frustration with it. And I will tell you, we're frustrated sometimes with the policy, with the budget process as well. So the governor puts out a budget proposal in January, and then our subcommittees start to meet in our various areas. And we then are looking at budget change proposals that are proposed by the administration to change the budget. That sounds a little bit odd. Don't we look at the whole budget? No, we don't. Every budget is essentially the same budget as the previous year, subject to budget change proposals, which then change what the budget is. And we then hold hearings and look at budget change proposals that are coming from the governor and that are also coming from areas that we're individually interested in on the committee. And we hold hearings and we talk about it and we pitch things to the governor, and they're always watching what we're doing. And then based on the receipts, the tax receipts after tax season, which is April, and they get a much better sense of what real revenues are going to be, and listening to what the legislature is interested in, the governor comes out with a revised budget in May. The term is sort of the May revise, which I hate. It's a revised budget, and in May. And then that becomes a little bit clearer of a picture of what the budget is going to look like. Now, remember, budgets are expenditure plans. They are not expenditures. There's not really an appropriation there. We have a different kind of appropriations process in the legislature, but it's really just a plan. And that means we can look at budget bills throughout the year that change what that budget plan is. And we hope money gets spent on things, but we're really on paper allocating money in various buckets that may or may not get spent in the way that we're directing it. Once we approve a budget, then it's up to the administration to spend it. We don't have the authority as the legislature to spend it, but we do have oversight in how that is spent. And in this year's budget, for example, we are going to be looking at and asking questions about last year's budget, which was approved last June, and how those monies were or were not spent, and whether they were spent in ways that were explained to us as we approved the budget. So the Assembly will put together a budget then in May, and will pass a budget. The Senate will also pass a budget, and any differences between those two go to what's called a conference committee, and they hash out those details. Then the legislature passes the budget, and we have to do that under the Constitution by June 15th. And the governor technically has until the end of June to sign it, but there's really no penalty for it. There was a ballot initiative that penalizes the legislature for not approving a budget by June 15th. So we will always do it, even though it's a work in progress, or even if it's a work in progress. Now, once the Assembly puts together a budget, the Senate puts together a budget, the final budget, and through conference committee, you know that there are lots of negotiations that are going on between budget leaders in both houses, Senate and Assembly, governor's office, and leadership, the Senate Pro Tem and the Assembly Speaker, and their offices. And what has happened in the last number of years is the budget that we vote on by June 15th is generally something that's been agreed to by all of the sort of leadership positions. And I will also tell you that as a member of Sub 5, my influence over the budget kind of leaves when we're done with the hearings, once the Assembly has put together its budget. So we are working right now on those budgets with respect to all of the public safety areas and trying to influence those. Members have specific asks, but we're also looking at various statewide issues. So this is where we have the most influence. And then once it gets kicked over to the final budget stuff, it's kind of horse trading between the Senate, the Assembly, and the governor, and what happens. So the budget then with CDCR, which I know is one of your questions, and remember that their budget's going to be last year's budget with changes driven by the governor's office, which means by the department itself, and changes that we are driving. One of the ways that we got some change in the way CDCR has operated is by insisting that they come up with a plan of closing prisons, for example. If we are supposed to be, as we're supposed to be, in declining population in the prisons, then it makes no sense to keep the same level of facility that we have had. And in fact, it's very clear that if we have beds, we will fill them. Historically, that's been the case. So the legislature's been very interested in seeing CDCR come up with a plan to reduce its budget and reduce the beds. But until we get there, as long as we have the personnel we have and we have the facilities that we have, there's very little that can be done to reduce the overall budget for CDCR, which is our goal. And if you watch our budget hearings, they can get a little tense because we are constantly pushing on the administration and CDCR to plan it out. Otherwise, the threat is, and it's a real threat, is we'll do it. But we're not experts. And that's the thing you also have to understand about legislators is none of us are experts in any of this. So for us to make detailed decisions about what facilities get closed or don't get closed may not really be the best way for us to go about it. I understand you're frustrated with that, as are we, but there are limits to really what we can do. And within that, we are pushing pretty hard. And fortunately, the budget chair in the Assembly, Phil Ting, is completely on board with this. So the chair of the Budget Subcommittee 5 is Christina Garcia, who has been doing a very good job with that. And Jennifer Kim, I'll put that name out there, is the staff to that budget subcommittee. And she is absolutely amazing, very knowledgeable in the process, very knowledgeable in how budgets get put together, and has been a tremendous ally as we work through this. And it's going to be an iterative process, and it's going to take cycles of time really to get where we want to go, just because of the nature of it. So we don't, in fact, look at every aspect of the budget. That would be daunting and almost impossible to do. We're only looking at budget change proposals that are put before us by the administration or that we put before us. And then that's really what we're voting on are those differences in there. So that's kind of the process. We've been very frustrated with the lack of information that has come out of CDCR and the real lack of specificity. And it's kind of disappointing because as we're talking to them, and as I talk to them on a fairly regular basis, they talk like they're willing, but they're not. And they don't always like us meddling in what they see as their business, although that is in fact what we are obligated to do. And that is our role, is to meddle in their business. And same thing with the courts. We give them money, they operate that, but they do operate also under the Constitution independently of what the legislature is doing. And although we have some say, and we certainly have oversight obligations with them. So things get a little bit complex there. And then, of course, the other way that we affect what happens in the administration or in the state of California is we get to pass laws. And when we pass a law, it is up to the administration to implement that law. The legislature does not implement, but the legislature does keep an eye on what is being implemented and what is not being implemented. And because of things like term limits, it's often difficult for any one legislator, unless they're around long enough or they have built up a coalition and have people brought in on issues to keep track of implementation. And I think it's a strategy of administrations to wait out various legislators and then just never get around to implementing. And one good thing is the term limit change that gives us a little bit more time in the legislature. So we're not only passing laws, but we're also seeing them implemented, which comes to another. And I know you've got questions. I'm touching on a lot of different things. But I was also asked about the AB 965, which was passed a couple of years ago. And this authorizes the Secretary of CDCR to issue credit earned at the earliest possible date because of this is for those eligible for youth parole. And they then have to issue regulations around it. And that's the implementation piece. They are now out for comment. And another advocacy piece is not just advocating at the legislature, but also advocating when there are regulations in place. Now, what's the difference between laws, statutes, and regulations? Statutes and regulations have essentially the same force and effect as law. The legislature passes a law, governor signs it, and then it becomes the law of the land. Regulations are an administrative legal process that work a little bit differently. The executive branch can issue, departments and agencies can issue regulations, but only if they're given authority to do so, and only within that authority given by the legislature. So we've given CDCR the opportunity and the obligation to come up with regulations to implement AB 965, and they are in that process now. In order for regulations to have the force and effect of law, they have to go through an administrative process, and that process is writing them under the authority of that was given to them by the legislature, and then they have to put them out for public comment. They have to read all the comments. They have to account for all of the comments, which is not always as satisfying as it sounds, because sometimes they just listen and that's all they need to do. But they're supposed to account for, take into effect, modify the regulations based on comments, and then issue final regulations. And if they do all of that and stay within the authority given them, those regulations then become like laws. So they're in that process now, implementing AB 965. And that means that everyone in California has the opportunity to read those regulations and weigh in on them. And they're supposed to be reading those, digesting all of the comments, seeing what changes they may make, and then before they issue final regulations. So this is a very good time and a very good opportunity to be heard. From my standpoint, we wrote the law, they're implementing the law. My next touch point with that as a legislator would be once the regulations are out, because if we think they got them wrong, we can pass another law to correct what we think was a misinterpretation, but we have to wait till they act before we really use our oversight, our piece of what oversight means with respect to the two different branches. And then we can certainly weigh in on what that means. We do something similar with the courts. Courts interpret the laws that we write, and if we think the courts get it wrong, then we can always rewrite a statute and point out where we thought they got it wrong. There are some obviously constitutional constraints to us being able to do that, but that's ultimately fine. So if I haven't put everybody to sleep, let me take some questions. I'm not sure what the best way to do this, because that's far more interesting probably for you and for me, and lets me know what you're interested in and how I can help.
Yes, thank you, Assemblymember Stone. I'll go ahead and facilitate the Q&A section. So folks, if you have questions, you can either drop them in the chat and I'll read them out, or feel free to raise your hand and I will call on you in order. I already see a hand up, but before we hop into it, I have a question, Assemblymember Stone. You talked a little bit about how advocates like us can be effective in advocating for the laws that we support, and also in the budget process. I'm wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more, and maybe if you could think of some like specific examples in which advocates were, really instrumental or really effective in helping to advance legislation in the 10 years you've been in office.
I think in most cases, the advocacy groups that are out there have been very effective and helpful in getting laws passed, because it's difficult for us to be proposing laws and debating laws out of any real context. And remember, we're not the experts. You guys actually are the experts. and realize that when you go in and you talk to legislators. So I think effective advocacy, which is a whole other topic that we can talk about, comes in a number of different forms, but it's personal relationships. So if you can develop relationships with individual legislators, that's the best way to get them to listen to you and to hear you, especially legislators who may not necessarily agree or who have no background in what it is you're trying to advocate for. And I always tell folks that some of the best ways to get legislators to start to agree and see things your way is to give us a little fact, give us something that we can know, and then that not necessarily everybody else knows. So if you can give me a little bit of information, and then I can go to my colleagues and make it sound like I know what I'm talking about, even if I don't, then I'm your friend because you've allowed me to do that. You have to understand we are not the best and the brightest. We're just who gets elected. So we come from, and that's not a pejorative statement, that's just the reality of it. We come from a variety of backgrounds and we're human. So building that rapport and helping us, I know this sounds pedantic and sort of very infantile, and in fact it is, but helping us feel smart about something is a way to start to build some trust and build that connection. And you might find an advocate in a legislator for a position you wouldn't have expected because they now understand something or think they understand something a little bit different than they did before. So advocacy is really building relationships. It's also telling stories and making sure that we understand what the day-to-day impact is of what it is that's being proposed, and whether you want to stop a bad bill or advocate for a good bill. Telling the stories, relating that impact that is real. And that is something, as I look around at least some of the pictures, I see a number of people that I know, it's something I know you're very good at, is telling those stories from the heart and relaying those experiences. Those are really very, very valuable. But also knowing your audience. You have to know your audience. You need to know who your allies are, who are challenges, and you can approach them a little bit differently. And I would be always careful about getting too aggressive, but don't let us off the hook too easily either. You should always have an ask and always say, and I hate this, and everybody hates this. Can we count on your support? Can we count on your support? Can we count on your support? It can backfire if you're going to a legislator who's always supported you and can we count on your support? Doesn't always go over very well. But others, be very clear what you want. Make sure they understand your agenda. Be professional and ask them for their support.
So essentially what you're saying is be a pain in the ass, but in a good way.
Yes. Yes.
Understood. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Crispy. I see your hand up. Go ahead, Crispy.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Assemblymember Stone. I am someone who goes to all of those sub-5 meetings for both the houses and comment. And so I can share your frustration of CDCR coming completely unprepared. I've been going for the past couple of years. I am gobsmacked at how unprepared they come. They don't justify any of the budget. And so I was wondering, I know from corporate, like if people don't justify their budget, they just don't get a budget. So, is it in your power to say, no, you don't get a budget? And also they haven't provided a plan for closures. And, in the past, we're trying to close Susanville. I'm going there tomorrow to talk to the town people about why won't you let us close your prison? But, they spent tens of millions of dollars on DVI, and then they closed it, right? So a lot of our taxpayer dollars are going for these prisons that, are going to be closing anyway, hopefully. And so it's really frustrating. I was wondering if there's some way that you can do something different and out of the box thinking, to change it, because it's the same story every year. And the other thing I just want to say is, I would like to ask for your support for SB 300. Taking your advice.
Good. I have no idea what that is. I'll have to look at it. And I rarely, my staff will tell you, know what my own bill numbers are. But yeah, we can talk about that. So the reality is a lot of what we do, and for those of you, and Krista, you've been around long enough that you know it's a little bit of theater. And yes, they come in unprepared, but that's a bit of a game. I think ultimately that gets played. So, but in the end, what we're listening to them, we're pushing on them, and there are lots of side conversations that happen, which is why you weighing in a committee hearing, which may look like it's frustrating, and it may look like nobody's paying attention. It may look like there's really no impact. There are the right people paying attention. And so what happens as we build our budget, we will take a lot of that lack of information, lack of planning, sort of how that's presented, and go to them and say, here's what you're going to get. And we will do that. Then they get upset and they provide a little bit more information, not necessarily in the hearing, but it does have an effect. So we will build a budget based on what we think is best, based on their input, what our desires are, and we will push it that way. So there's a lot that does happen behind the scenes. The public stuff, and I've heard it described as a bit of kabuki, which yeah, it can be, and it can seem kind of frustrating, but that has a way of driving those other conversations, which is why getting to know someone like Jennifer Kim is very important, and as important for you as for me, because I want her on my good side, or I want to be on her good side when I'm making asks, or when I want a particular perspective. And so the budget that the Assembly passes will actually incorporate a lot of what we're looking for, and then it gets negotiated from there. Now, unfortunately, I don't have much say where it goes from there. And the governor's not going to be happy if we just say no money for CDCR. That just won't, that's not ultimately going to fly. But in the various categories and the way that's constructed, yeah, we do that all the time. We hold money back. They want money for something, we won't give them until they've established certain milestones. There are a lot of those techniques that get built into the budget that are not necessarily apparent from the budget hearing. But we leverage off of what you do in those budget hearings and the information you put into it, plus what we're wanting to do in order to build that budget. So it does have an effect. I would think for you, it's probably very frustrating to watch, but I understand that. But your advocacy really does make a difference in how we build our budget. But then we have to negotiate with the Senate and the administration, and all the wheels can come off sometimes through that process. But we take our best shot at what we can do. And then if it's not working, the next year we do the same thing. We've actually, I think we've moved CDCR on some of these issues over the years that I've been in there. It's been slower than I would have liked, but we've actually been making some progress.
Well, I wanted to thank you. And I also wanted to let you know that I am meeting with Jennifer Kim, and she is awesome.
She is awesome.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Jay for your question.
Hey, Assemblymember Mark Stone, I just want to say.
And knock that crap off. Just call me Mark.
Hey, I always try to show respect, but I want to say thank you so much
that's fair.
For everything that you've done. I'm formerly incarcerated. I appreciate all the advocacy. I appreciate, making our situation better and being an advocate. I've always wanted to shake your hand. I'm sure eventually I will, especially being that, we'll be traveling the state a lot for, a different organization that we're associated with. And with that being said, I wanted to know, my question is twofold. I tend to ask compound questions. What was it like to put on fleek in the official record for California State Legislature? and also, on a more serious note, I wanted to ask, is there any way that the legislator knows about, or is there any way that we could, kind of bring up and address the fact that at the end of every fiscal year, CDCR intentionally wastes their budget in order to try to get more money the next year. This is something that, you know, as an incarcerated person, you know, we hear the officers talk about having to do transfers, they do mass transfers, they do all this stuff to use up all their budget, because they know if they don't use it up, then they won't get the same allotment or even more the next fiscal year going forward. So, and I know it's not just CDCR that does it, it's a lot of other departments as well in California that does it. But CDCR is notorious for it. You know, they start riots, they start all these different things in order to try to lock down the facilities and you know, cause like wasteful spending of the funds just to use up that budget. So
yeah, so unfortunately, that's the nature, as I described. We take last year's budget, that becomes the budget for the next year, subject to budget change proposals. That does, in any public budget, set up exactly what you talked about, that the spending is driven to match what the budget is, or that potentially puts the next year's budget in jeopardy. And I think what you described, in a lot of cases, it's not necessarily that harmful, but what you described from CDCR is harmful because it has an impact on the population, and that is not a good thing. We are aware that that happens, but it's a difficult thing to substantiate ultimately and to prove. So the way the budget process works, we have to have some trust in how that happens, but every department, in fact, does have incentives to spend to their budget, or it puts it at risk. That just has different implications depending on what that department is, which is why we're really driving. And with CDCR, the biggest challenge that we have is that all the prison guards are a member of a union. All the prison guards have job rights. And the legislature is, and it's a good thing, will always be protective of unions and union memberships. Now, you know that the public safety unions, the CCPOA and the police officers and all that, where we're susceptible, or we want to help them protect their jobs from a traditional labor standpoint, wages, working conditions, and all of that. And yet they leverage that in the legislature with using that clout for things that are not productive, and especially in the way society is currently constructed. That's been a bit of a comeuppance in the legislature the last couple of years, which has been interesting to watch. And I think some of those unions are losing their clout because they're not playing right. But so with CDCR, the legislature is going to be very careful about not just doing sweeping changes and having a lot of people lose their jobs, even though that's counterproductive to what we want to do within the prisons, which is lower the costs, move those people on. And we're going to need retirements, we're going to need resignations, we're going to need a lot of those. So we're heavily scrutinizing where they're talking about new hires, where they're talking about transfers, where they're talking about perpetuating that workforce that needs to be reduced. That's the piece that we're looking very closely at. And the on fleek comment, you can blame Taina for that.
Yeah, we know that's in the official record. We've seen it on the video. Thank you for that.
I just want to go on this official record saying I didn't ask him to say that, but I definitely got a call from our staff like, Taina, what did you do teaching him that word? Now it's on the assembly floor, but I take no responsibility for that whatsoever.
And for about half the people on the floor, it just went, but that's all right.
So I definitely noticed, and I think a lot of people who matter noticed as well. Anthony, I also see your hand up, so I'll go ahead and pass it to you to ask your question.
Yeah, Assemblyman Stone, I have a question about how granular is the budget for CDCR? I mean, do they have to commit to spending a certain amount on mental health, physical health, rehabilitation, those kind of things? I mean, how much can you force the CDR to, engage in rehabilitative programs or increase them, or how to give better medical care, better mental health care? Can you do that through the budget process? Is it granular enough?
It is and it isn't. And hang on, I'm gonna go It's getting dark here. I'm going to go turn on an actual light. So it is and it isn't. And because the lion's share of the budget is actually in personnel who are there. That's what we're talking, and facilities. That those per se don't lend themselves to the granularity that you're talking about. However, what we do is we set expectations for programming that they're doing and kind of cultural changes within the department on that approach to rehabilitation. And I think, in fairness, there have been in certain sectors some real strides made over the last couple of years, and a bit of a change in culture at the leadership level. Now, the hard part is it has not gone down into the rank and file. And I've been to a lot of the prisons, and a lot of those, especially guys who've been around a long time, really don't care. They don't see their role as providing rehabilitation or being any part of it. But there are a lot of community organizations who do want to be a part of it. So they're offering help and services. There are a lot of the management structure, if you will, I think is sometimes frustrated with their inability to deliver some of the programming that we're asking them to do. And so we do look a little bit top level, but we're setting every year, setting better expectations for the rehabilitative side. But it's a very difficult cultural shift to make with a lot of the folks who are there, who, and that back to our previous conversation, as we cycle people through, we can in the long term rethink the workforce into something that is much more productive. So I've been working on a number of specific initiatives to kind of drive that. And one of the things that we're looking to fund and been working pretty closely with, there's a Veterans Transition Center in Monterey, and they have some excellent programs in Salinas within the prisons there for helping veterans connect. And it's been very successful. The recidivism rate among the population who receive those services in the prison and who come out into the Veterans Transition Center programs, recidivism rate is rock bottom. It's really incredible. They've shown some success there because it's a program that has veterans talking to veterans. And I think we're trying to expand that now. We're trying to invest and be able to expand that to other facilities, which would be good. But I think there's a huge lesson in here that when you get people who know how to talk to various populations inside, so veterans to veterans and others, we can have much greater success. But we have to allow it and set up some of those programs. So the possibilities now for educational opportunities and others is actually growing. But I think there are some impediments to those, and a lot of it has to do with attitudes at each site, and kind of breaking down some of that and allowing some of these programs to be more successful. It's frustrating for me to see the differences site to site with some of the programming that's there when there really is supposed to be some consistency, and there isn't. So we drive kind of programming and then look for outcomes as opposed to dictating on that granular level. And it's not necessarily a budget action because the budget is seen more in aggregate, and it's how they apply those resources that we try to hold them to.
So if I could just follow up on that very briefly and maybe rephrase my question too. It's like some of us are very concerned in addition to abolition outright, but we're really concerned about conditions in prison. And I'm thinking like poor medical care, and I'm thinking about poor food. I mean, we can't even hold the CDCR to the same standards as school lunches, can we? So how do we move the needle on that?
I can say to Rosie, yeah, we can. That we can do is hold them to nutritional standards and all. And from the medical standpoint, I think we're starting to come back to a point where the legislature can have influence, but because of the lawsuit and the federal receiver, they were driving all of those decisions. The administration wasn't, and the legislature wasn't, because the courts had control over that because of the receivership process. So that kind of complicated our ability to weigh in on the medical. But yeah, we've tried to be dealing with mental health. We've been trying to ensure that we are looking at better provision of services and some responsibility for there. The food, it's always interesting talking to some of you because you bring up issues that I wasn't really aware of. I didn't realize that the food was so bad, and they actually have an obligation to do that. So that's something that probably does need to be looked into. And we can also pass laws and say, here are your minimum standards. I don't know if those standards are already in place, and if they are, that's an oversight function. If we need to change those standards, that's also something we can do.
Yeah, for sure. Those are standards that needs to be changed. Thanks for raising that, Anthony. Daisy, I'll go ahead and pass it to you to ask your question.
Thanks, Taina. And thank you so much for being so thorough in all of your responses tonight, Assemblymember Stone. This has been very informational, so I'm enjoying having you here tonight. I'm wondering with regards to like the topics that are discussed in the sub-5 committee, especially when it comes to CDCR, is there, because you mentioned building relationships and then having those key relationships with folks in the legislature is an important tool for us to be aware of. Is there any way in terms of like if the community wants a certain topic that pertains to public safety or to CDCR to be addressed in a sub-5 hearing? Like, do committee members have any influence as far as what topics get covered? Like, how are folks out here able to voice and be loud enough to get something on an agenda for discussion if they are wanting that addressed? And then my last question, I have a burning desire to ask since I first met you in 2019. How many bow ties do you have in your collection? Because I've seen so many over the years, and I've been wondering for years, like, how many does he have? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Probably 15 or 18 bow ties. I don't know. Yeah, but on the first one, absolutely, you can. So there's stuff on the agendas that I make sure are there all the time. This is why Jennifer Kim is very important, because she can get things on agendas, and the chair is really key. Chairs, I chair a policy committee. That agenda is my agenda, and the same thing is true in sub-5. So we're looking at what BCPs are coming to us, but we're also we're able to talk about anything we want to talk about. And if, for example, there's no BCP on it, but we're concerned about implementation of something or last year's budget or things that we're hearing, absolutely, we can make that a topic. So you do have the ability to influence that by building relationships with members of the committee, but also with Jennifer Kim, who's a staffer, with the chair, Christina Garcia. And that's really how it happens. It's a small committee. The Democrats are Christina's chair, Reggie, myself, there are 2 Republicans, and they don't always participate very much. They vote because that's their obligation if they're there, and they often leave early. So the real drivers of that, and there's no reason that they can't be drivers and can't be a part of it. There's absolutely no reason other than sort of their own interest and desires. They're rarely driving any of the policies. So the main drivers of that would be the chair, and then the chair of public safety, Mr. Jones Sawyer, and myself. And of course, Jennifer. Things get on. If Jennifer wants something on the hearing, you betcha it's there.
Thank you. Okay, we have time for one more question. So Sherry, I'll go ahead and pass it to you.
Thank you. This is probably, well, I'm sure it's very naive. I'm learning a lot. Thank you very much. But you're saying that the budget committees kind of have control over how the money is supposed to be spent when it's presented a certain way. I just have 2 little items that I'm wondering, is there any kind of follow-up? Is there any kind of committee that follows up on the promises they have made to you on how it's going to be done? I just recently got to visit my son last weekend for the first time in months because they've had lockdown forever. But he pointed out that they're putting cameras everywhere. They're putting all this conduit in, and there's going to be cameras everywhere in every single dorm everywhere. And he says, it's interesting. I don't know where they found the money because they haven't fixed the roofs in 4 years. They've been leaking for 4 years. So where they place the money, is that something that they have to tell you that they're going to do that? And is there someone who follows up on it? And as far as the food goes, he was all excited that they got chicken on the bone for the first time in 7 years. And that to me is sad.
That is sad. That really breaks my heart. Yeah, I didn't realize it was a problem that it was. So yes, there's not another committee. It's the same committee that looks, but we look at this year to year. And so if we have put a program in place and they're not spending the money, so back to my original point, a budget is a planning document. We're essentially authorizing money to be spent out of the budget. How it gets spent, once we do that, how it gets spent is really up to the administration. Then the next year, when they're asking for money, we are asking the questions to the extent we know what the problems in implementation have been. And if we don't know and nobody's telling us, then it's difficult to know whether or not it was actually spent to plan. We can ask them, but again, we need to know to ask some of those questions, and we don't always. If there's an initiative that is put together that I'm interested in, for example, I'll ask about that, look at implementation and do that. I do a lot of work in the child welfare space, and I'm constantly doing that. If I wasn't, I don't know who else would. Depends on who's interested in that. Now the cameras would be a good example, an interesting example where they've come and asked us for a specific allocation for cameras. And if we approve that, then they will spend that amount of money. It almost has a different color only on the cameras, and they have to be answerable to where that was spent. And they're not going to then be able to take camera money and spend it on roofs. So if what we need to do, and this is the capital expenditures and the maintenance expenditures are always a big issue with them, because they want to do maintenance on buildings that we want to see them close. Why would we do some of these investments where we're going to see buildings getting closed? It's kind of that part is really difficult to see. But we're constantly looking at trying to make sure we understand where they want to do capital upgrades and in some of the investments. That is money that would be put in the budget, a pot, and then they figure out how to spend it. And if they said they're going to be doing roofs in these facilities and they never do, then the next year we may say, well, we're not going to give you a capital outlay budget if you're not going to spend it the way you told us you were going to spend it. And that's the kind of dance. But if money is allocated for cameras, it will be spent on cameras and won't be available to other capital investments. You have to look in essentially that pot.
I think what drew his attention to is that's what he used to do on the outside was security cameras.
Yeah.
Years ago. So he knows how much money it costs and how much effort's involved, and they're going to have to be shifting guys from dorm to dorm to dorm. Still with COVID, still there, still with guards not masking up. So it's worrisome. But the roof leaking, they've known for years. I mean, they just stick buckets, and it just seemed really odd, like an odd. Seems like safety would be more, keep them warm and dry rather than. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, you'd think, but rational thought doesn't always enter into this. Logic doesn't always enter into this, and that's kind of the nature of it. But you're also talking about a symptom of a system that doesn't look at the people for whom they're responsible as people. This is the heart of what we're pushing back against, and the we is collective here. Is trying to ensure that we have a system that treats people as people, and it fundamentally doesn't.
So true. And on that note, we are at time, so I want to wrap us up a little bit. But before I do that, Roxy had messaged me earlier saying that she wanted to say something, so I'm going to pass it to you, Roxy, before I close out this section.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Tina. Well, it's an honor to be in space with you, Mr. Mark. I don't know if you remember me. I did your bagels and your dry cleaning for about 4 years. I just gotta say, I just think you're a great person. You're very super humble, and I appreciate what you have done with the bills. It's like, personally, it's helped my loved one come home in June. So, and that's all thanks to you. And I just wanted to say that and say you're a great person, and thank you for everything you do with Initiate Justice too.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to see you. I don't think we've crossed paths in a while, but yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Chat. No, it's nice to see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Mark, Roxy's one of our star outside organizers. She's gone through our Institute of Impacted Leaders and is one of our most active members and a superstar in Sacramento.
See, just relationships develop by interactions, and you just never know who you're going to meet and come across. That's cool.
So true. And I can also, share from personal experience in working for you, Mark. You truly are like one of the kindest people I've ever met. I often tell people I don't think I've ever heard Mark say anything mean ever. You're the same person that you are in front of everybody. You do this work with so much integrity, and I'll speak for everyone at Initiate Justice and say that we've been so grateful for you to have the opportunity to work with you these last several years. So we do have a little thank you that we want to offer. So Daisy, I'm gonna pass it to you.
Yes, let me get my screen set up. So we have a very short video. Prior to COVID, for folks who are new, we would take folks who were participants of our training program, Institute of Impacted Leaders, to the Capitol, and Assemblymember Stone would often speak to us before we would go and visit legislators and really just give us that pep talk that we needed to be able to share our story. So as one of the participants of that program and graduates, really appreciate the time you took to be with us tonight and in those spaces, and as a champion for our bills. And we just want to say thank you so much, and we wish you a happy retirement. And it's going to load in a second. Just give it a second. Promise it's coming. Hold on 1 second.
And I will correct the record because Taina has heard me talk not so kindly. We get a little snarky about some of my colleagues from time to time, but don't repeat that. That's all internal information.
Honestly, I feel like you could say so much worse. I still consider everything you say to be so kind.
We really appreciate everything you've done for our community, and folks here have expressed just how grateful we are for your work. So folks, if you want to drop in the chat your sentiments, but thank you so much, Assemblymember Stone, for joining us this evening and for staying a couple of minutes over. We appreciate your time, and we wish you a very happy retirement from the state legislature.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's been my pleasure working with all of you. You're doing great work. Keep it up, keep the faith, and we'll make change. It doesn't happen as quickly, I think, as we all want, but it does happen.
Great, thank you so much, Assemblymember Stone. And there's several comments in the chat that are just wishing you a happy retirement, and we appreciate you being here with us this evening.
Happy to be.
Have a great evening, Assemblymember Stone.
All right. Thank you. You all too. Take care.
So for the next, so we hope that you all enjoyed that segment tonight with Assemblymember Stone. We are recording the meeting, so if you ever want to go back to watch that segment, we'll make sure to upload that on our YouTube channel, and you'll be receiving that link in the email that we send out in the days to come. And thank you, Taina, for facilitating that segment, and everybody for your questions. We're actually going to move on to the next portion of tonight's presentation and program, which is actually with our policy team. So Assemblymember Stone mentioned regulations pertaining to youth credits. So I'm actually going to pass it over to Greg, who's our policy director, and Sarah, while I get the screen set up.
Thank you, Daisy. Thank you, everyone, for making the time this evening, and I hope you all enjoyed the really great conversation we just had with Mr. Stone. So thanks to Mr. Stone, right? We have AB 965 that was passed 2 years ago, and that legislation is finally being implemented. So it's been a very long wait. I really liked, one of the things that I really took away from what the member just shared was that sometimes the administrations will just wait out legislators, right? Because legislators have term limits. CDCR doesn't have a term limit, right? They can drag their toes and drag their heels and wait forever to implement things. So I was thinking of that in relation to these regulations while he was speaking, but we finally have our opportunity to make our voices heard as it relates to the implementation of AB 965. So again, this has been 2 years in the waiting. When the bill was passed, there was a 2-year delayed implementation that the department asked for and that they were granted in order to figure out their own internal things, computer-wise and other technology-related petty things, like Jay is saying. I agree. So they've been dragging their feet for 2 years, but they finally opened up the regulations and they opened up the public comment period for the implementation of AB 965. Now, AB 965, while that is the operative legislation that these regulations are based off, CDCR is calling them YPED regulations, YPED, Youth Parole Eligible Date regulations. This is AB 965 implementation. They're just calling it a different thing. So if you're hearing Initiate Justice say YPED regulations, you're thinking, oh, what is that? Is that related to 965? This is exactly AB 965 and the implementation of it. So in a moment, when Daisy is ready, she will share her screen, and we have created a very, very simple, easy form for you all to use to submit your public comment and to offer your thoughts on the proposed regulations. So as you will see, as you see here, we give you a brief summary of what these regulations are doing, how it relates to Prop 57. And then thanks to this form that was created by our awesome team at Initiate Justice, all you need to do is add your personal information and hit send. In this form, in this feedback will go directly to CDCR. Now, the public comment that we have inserted here, of course, we suggest that you read it, and we ask folks to customize it there. You can see in the second sentence, I'm a stakeholder because blah, blah, blah. That's where you would say, because I have a loved one, because I'm formerly incarcerated, because I care about this issue. So it's really important that folks there add their own personal touch. But then we would encourage folks to read the draft public comment that we've created. And again, if folks want to go further, if they want to add to it, we definitely would recommend that. Jane, we will provide a link in a moment. So definitely sit tight, that's coming. And the public comment period is open until May 2nd. So from now until then, you will see us posting this on social media. You'll probably see it being talked about in various committees over email as well, because it's really, really important that we make our voices heard in this situation. So again, I don't want to, I know it's been a long evening, so I don't want to get into the contents of this right now on this call. I will say that tomorrow at noon, Taina and myself will be going on Instagram Live at Initiate Justice to discuss in detail what we think about these proposed regulations. In short, this is not, the proposed regulations are not fully in compliance with the spirit or the intent of AB 965, and that CDCR is only proposing to offer one type of credit to advance someone's youth parole date instead of all 5 credits that they have the ability to do so under Prop 57. And 1 out of 5 credits is not enough, right? And if they don't hear from people, they'll just, you know, skirt right through this process. They think they're doing a great job and they'll just go about it. But we have the opportunity now to explain why we think all 5 credits that Daisy's highlighting here need to be implemented, and offer our own reasoning and background why that is important. So also simultaneously, this public comment period is available for folks who are currently incarcerated. And I know Lee and Adam and our inside team are making sure folks inside are getting a very similar public comment format that they can as well to submit to CDCR. And I think really our goal collectively here should be to submit hundreds, if not thousands, of these public comments directly to CDCR. Because again, they can ignore 1 or 2, they can't ignore thousands of letters telling them all 5 credits, don't just do 1, you're undermining the intent of Prop 57. So for a lot of reasons, we really need to make our voice heard here. And I think also what Mr. Stone was saying is that this is more or less our only time to do that as it relates to the implementation of this legislation. So they dragged their feet for 2 years. They're finally giving us a small little window to offer our thoughts in the public comment. And they don't know what's coming for them, right? Because I guarantee everybody on this call, right, is going to submit a public comment. And I would also ask you all to be ambassadors in your community and asking others to do the same in terms of submitting these public comments. So again, you have until May 2nd to do so. This form will be provided to folks. Oh, thank you, Antoinette. And I think, yeah, it's already there in the comments. And again, we'll make sure this is out over social media, over email, over, you know, whatever spaces is helpful for people. But again, this is just our opportunity to make our voices heard. And if there's one thing that Initiate Justice knows how to do, and I think one thing we can take away from what Mr. Stone just said is to use our voices, again, to know how to do it professionally and respectfully, but to make sure that we are speaking up. So yeah, and for everybody in the chat who's saying, make sure we get this form, definitely will do. I know Daisy and others do a really concerted effort to go back and make sure they're catching everything in the chat. So anybody who's concerned about not getting the comment, we will get it to you, no worries. We will ask you to fill it out. You should fill it out once. There may be a temptation, one person to fill it out multiple times, but I think it is one person, one submission per person, but it's you sending it to 10 or 15 people that will have the very large impact that we're looking for. And again, you know, the regulations are, in my opinion, overlooked in the legislative process or in the political process in general. But if you're not making sure that your bill is implemented properly and you're not monitoring implementation, you know, you really got to ask, are you going as far as you should be? Are you being accountable to the folks inside and to the policies that we're trying to advance? And thank you for the people who are saying done, already submitted. Thank you, Crispy, posting on Facebook, Twitter. And again, we have until May 2nd. You will probably see this form again in many spaces. It'll be going out on email listservs and things like this. And again, please join myself and Taina tomorrow at noon on Instagram for our IG live session. We'll do a deep dive. I just wanted to give people the quick overview right here. And then tomorrow with Taina, we'll get into detail about why this is important, what this means, and why we should be a respectful pain in the ass. But with that, oh, Taina, I think I'll pass to you. I see the hand up.
Yes, I did just want to add one quick thing, since Greg, you were, underscoring the importance of the regulations process. So the whole reason that we even have AB 965 in the first place was because of the implementation work that we did around the Prop 57 regulations. Back in 2017, when Proposition 57 was being implemented and we were going through that regulations process, we conducted a survey asking folks inside how do they think Prop 57 should be implemented. And one of the top demands that we got was that credits should be applied to people's youth parole eligibility dates, and since that didn't happen in the Prop 57 regulations process, we followed up the following year and introduced it as a bill. And here we are a couple of years later. Now we're in the regulations process for a bill that came out of the regulations process for Proposition 57. So, as Assemblymember Stone mentioned earlier, if we don't get everything that we want in this regulations process, we can always introduce more bills moving forward. But it is very important that we engage not only in the legislative process and moving these bills forward, but it's incredibly important that we also are involved in the regulations process. So thanks, Greg, for that presentation.
Yeah, right on. And one more thing I'll just share with folks is that I know our Instagram Live tomorrow at noon, you may not be able to make it, but rest assured, we save it. We will make it available in perpetuity. So if you ever want to go back and talk about regulations and see myself and Taina doing it, it'll be available tomorrow for folks who can't make it at noon on the dot. It'll be available for folks to come back to and to review. And I will always make myself and the rest of the team available for questions people have about this process and others that we're currently working on. So with that, I did want to keep this as brief as possible because I know it has been a long evening, but I hope to see some of you all tomorrow at noon, again on Instagram Live with Taina. And please submit this form and tell many, many people to do so. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much for that, Greg. And if I'm not mistaken, CDCR does have to respond to every single public comment. Is that correct?
That's a great question.
That's correct. They have to respond. It'll probably be a boilerplate response that they give to everybody, but they are obliged to respond.
Yeah, Taina took the words out of my mouth. You'll get a response. It's probably not what you're assuming and it won't be substantive, but you'll get some computer generated response. But yeah, great addition, Daisy.
Thanks, Greg and Taina. And just to, I dropped a link in the chat in case folks wanted to read about the impact that Initiate Justice had on Prop 57. But just to put it in a nutshell, because we were able to organize folks around that campaign, CDCR had to read more than 41,000 comments, 41K, 410000, 41000. That's like close to half of what the population inside is. And so they had to respond to every single comment. So please share the word with anybody in your community, anybody that is able to submit public comment. Like I said, we've made this form accessible for you all, very easy. And so please join Greg and Taina on Instagram Live tomorrow at noon if you have further questions, but we also will be posting that recording on our YouTube channel. So thank you both so much for that. And so in closing tonight's meeting, thank you all for hanging tight with us. We know it's been a long night. Again, if it's your first time here, stick around. We'll do a very short orientation just to give you some of the overviews for folks who are brand new to our meetings. But one thing that we do at the end of the program is highlight a member of the month. And essentially, this is someone that we want to recognize and uplift for their efforts and contributions to various aspects of our work. So for the month of April, we wanted to highlight somebody who just graduated last summer from one of our cohorts. And so they are now an outside organizer and hit the ground running from the moment they graduated. They provided valuable input at a retreat that we had for our organizers last fall, and is very active in several committees. They're involved in advocacy, inside and outside membership, and they've helped with projects such as doing the survey process that we did on Assembly AB 292 and entering surveys to be able to get the data that we need, as well as facilitating various events with our inside membership committee. In addition, they've also been a very active supporter of our podcast, Abolition Corner, which is the space that Sarah mentioned, is a companion for the podcast. And also on our social media platforms. That's another way for folks to stay engaged, is to share the word about our events, reshare our posts if you're able to, and this person definitely lives up to that. And has also been a huge support with various projects that we are having our outside organizers take on. But really just a pleasure to be able to have this person on our side and working with us to help tackle the issues that are most important to our communities, and really delighted just to see this person growing in their capacity as an outside organizer after going through our Institute of Impacted Leaders program. So please join me in congratulating Selena who is our April 2022 Member of the Month. I don't know if you're still here, Selena, but if you are, definitely want to let you know just how much the team appreciates you for everything that you've done as part of a member and organizer of our organization, and for doing the work in your community as well, and speaking out about the issues that that really hit home for you. But if you wanted to share anything with folks, feel free to unmute yourself. But we just wanted to thank you so much for everything that you have done for Team Initiate Justice and our community.
Oh, sorry. This is like, I didn't expect this. But honestly, it's like an honor to, and just being in this space with everyone, especially more recently, you know, it's very uplifting and such a caring environment with such amazing individuals. So I'm very glad to be here and to continue this work until, you know, until the end. So yeah, thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, Selena, so much. And there's so much love in the chat for you. If folks have been at various committee spaces and events, you probably have seen Selena. So just know that you definitely are someone that we value at Initiate Justice. So I'm actually going to pass it off to Antoinette, who's going to close us out for the evening. But again, for first timers here, please join us. Very short orientation. We know it's been a long night, but otherwise, thank you for joining us, and I'll pass it over to Antoinette.
Thank you, Daisy, and just sharing sentiments and everyone's sentiments. Selena, just thank you so much. We truly appreciate all of the commitment that you share with us so willingly and also so givingly. So thank you so much. And just to close us out, I do want to remind everyone that we are here every first Wednesday of the month at the same time at 6:30 p.m. So make sure that you catch us again next month on Wednesday, May 4th. You can RSVP for our member meeting at any time on any month at tinyurl.com/IJ monthly. Use that link at any time to register for our next member meeting. And also do not forget to submit your public comment for the YPED regulations. Let's make sure that we are maintaining our efforts by seeing our bills through to implementation after they become laws. Also, don't forget, if you are a part of the Inside Membership Committee, there is not an Inside Membership Committee meeting this month, but if you go to initiatejustice.org/calendar, you can take a look at all of the other events and meetings that we have going on throughout the month. Thank you everyone for being here. We'll make sure that this recording is provided and shared so that you can all rewatch it, but definitely want to encourage everyone to submit their public comment. Join us at 12 tomorrow if you're available for IG Live with Taina and Greg, and we will see everyone next month on May 4th.
May the 4th be with you. Come prepared.
That's a good one, Daisy. You should have closed this out. If you're joining us for the first time tonight, don't forget to hang around for about 15 minutes with Daisy and myself for a quick new member orientation so that you can learn a little bit more about our work.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, Selena. Thank you so much. Happy you were here, and you're always here. So definitely thank you as always.